Behind every broken computer is a story, and some are too good not to share. Story 1. Dusty Cables. Hello. Quite a few years ago, I was first-level support for a large car manufacturer. On that fateful day, I got a call by a user that his internet was bad. He had already created a ticket, and the ticket showed that there was a problem with his router and that he needed to restart his router in order to fix the problem. How to do that? Simply pull the power plug from the router, wait a moment, then plug it back in. The user told me that he had done so, but the problem persisted, which is why he called again. I logged onto the router. Uptime. About 3.500 days equals greater than he did not restart his router. Unfortunately, I could not restart the router remotely either. How to get the person to do it right and not just saying he did. He sounded to be about my age range, so I said, "Do you remember the old game cartridges for the Game Boy, where sometimes there was dust in them and you had to blow into the cartridge to remove the dust to get it to work?" It seems that he had a special router that sometimes had a similar problem with dust in the power cable. So in order to make sure that this isn't the problem, could he please pull out the power cable, blow over the connections to dislodge and dust, and put it back in? He agreed, and moments later I lost connection to the router too. He finally pulled the cable and waited long enough for the router to properly restart. After that, everything worked the way it should. Surprise! There must have been dust in the cable. Story 2. The disconnected invoice printer won't print. Our customer base was equipment dealerships, database and AS400s, PC network as workstations, and to run branded part databases. This was back in the days when printers were hard-cabled. Customer complaint. Invoice printer not printing. He tells me which computer it is connected to. Remote desktop and customer having high-speed internet was rare back then, so I'm dialed into his AS400, looking at the status of the printers on the network while also talking to him on the phone and having him be my eyes for the Windows computer and the printer. I'm just not seeing the invoice printer online, even though he insists it is connected to PCNAME. Customer is starting to get kind of irate. "We need our invoice printer now," etc. One of those customers who want it fixed, but is too impatient to help make it happen. I don't want to call him a liar, but things just are not adding up. Let's trace the cables. I already told you printer is connected to PCNAME. I know, sir, but if you would just humor me, perhaps we have a loose or bad cable. I walk him through finding the parallel printer cable connected to the back of the printer. Now please physically follow that cable and tell me where the other end goes. It's just laying here on the desk. Say again? It's not connected to anything. It's just here on the desk. I thought you told me it is connected to PCNAME. Well, yeah, that's the PC it connects to, but right now that PC is out for repairs, so the printer cable isn't hooked up to it. Cue silent facepalms. The dude had already told me multiple times he had checked the cable and it was connected to PCNAME. Once I got an honest answer, it took no time at all to temporarily move their invoice printer to a PC that hadn't been sent away for repairs. Story 3. Helping a customer find an EEEWO cable. Alright, so this took place quite a number of years ago when I worked in sales for a tech company that sold a large number of electronics, appliances, and other technical products. On occasion, I would help out our service team if it was a slow sales day and handle calls that would come in at their desk. This let them focus on actual work that needed to be done instead of dealing with inane customer consultation. Yes, it was very inefficient from a business standpoint to help random strangers over the phone for free. Anyway, I pick up the phone when it rings. "Hi, you've reached Emerald at Company Tech Support. How are you doing today?" Heavy breathing on the other end for a moment. Then, "I need an EEEWO cable. Do you guys carry those?" "I'm sorry, a what cable?" "EEEWO. I know it sounds dumb, I've never heard of such a cable in my life. And I like to think I'm normally a pretty technical guy. What device are you needing it for, sir? That'll maybe help us narrow down what kind of cable you're looking for." "It's a camera. Like a professional quality video camera. My friend was a videographer, but he gave me this one after he upgraded. Said his new one was way better, and anyway, it needs an EEEWO cable in order to connect properly, I think. It's supposed to be able to send video straight to a computer box or something like that." "Of course, sir. Alright, let's go back to basics. What's got you thinking the cable is called EEEWO? It says it on the camera, right beside the port." Can you spell out EEEWO for me?" "Sure. IWOH. IWOH. It says EEEWO. Odd, I've never— Wait a minute. What? What is it? Do you have an EEE-WO cable? Sir, can you rotate the camera 180 degrees and tell me what the letters say upside down? HDM. Oh, fuck me. Story 4. Feels so good when a simple solution works. Here's a simple, sweet palate cleanser for all you hard-working IT professionals who have messy troubleshooting problems. I had set up a couple of wireless access points for my parents because they live in a big old brick house, and their router signal wasn't penetrating throughout everywhere they needed it. Specifically, I set up one in the back room of the house furthest from the router, and one in the living room because they needed a strong signal in there for their Roku. I tried to name the networks the same so that my parents' devices would switch seamlessly between them, but for some reason the iPad would prefer to stay connected to a faint signal than switch to a stronger one. That was beyond the limits of my IT knowledge. I'm savvy for a loser but no expert, so I named the one back room and the other one living room. Unfortunately, my mom was more than capable of using the settings menu to switch as needed. I set up the Roku for them and connected it to living room, and it functioned fine for a number of years. After those years, the wireless access point in the living room died completely, so I said I'd look at it when I was next there. My mom had told me that they'd switched ISP and their new router was much stronger, so I decided to just reconfigure the Roku to use that. Unfortunately though, my parents had failed to warn me that they'd lost the remote for the Roku and had been using the remote control app on their phones, which connect to the Roku over Wi-Fi, which was now broken. So I found myself in a bit of a pickle. How can I reconfigure the Roku to connect to Wi-Fi when the only way of controlling it is through the Wi-Fi that it isn't currently connected to? I thought it was a long shot, but I decided to try swapping the wireless access point from the back room and renaming it to living room and see if the Roku would connect to it automatically. I honestly expected it to fail. How often is a front-facing username important in IT? I assumed, in my completely inexpert way, that there would be some kind of unique identifier for the access point other than its name. But I tried it, and it worked. I got connected to the Roku, changed its settings to connect to the now adequate main Wi-Fi, and then put the access point back where I'd taken it from, after renaming it again, of course. Is there any better feeling than when a simple solution just works? Story 5. How to save $150 a month by spending $2,800. A little background. I'm a paralegal at a small law firm who is slightly more tech-savvy than anyone in my office. About 9 months ago, my boss gave me a raise and a small reduction in my required billable hours so I could make IT stuff a part of my job. Overall, I like the new role and additional responsibility, but to be clear, I'm not especially tech-savvy. I basically set up hardware and people call me with their problems to see if I can solve it. Most of the time, I just have them call our third-party IT company. I just know that the HDMI cable goes into the hole shaped like an HDMI cable. My boss, we'll call him Dave, is a wannabe hard-ass in an extremely not hard-ass law firm and has been on a bit of a tear lately over IT costs. Dave is a lawyer. He's not an accountant or IT guy. He's been micromanaging, sending me contradictory emails within minutes of each other. Almost every 2 weeks he tells me to start looking for a new third-party IT company and then recants within the hour, and becomes angry when he gets any pushback or suggestions whatsoever to his ideas. Last month, the big thing was the number of computers being serviced by our IT company. He gave me a list of 10 computers that he wanted taken off service with our IT company. I mentioned that maybe we should keep a spare or two in case something goes wrong with one of the 75 other computers we have at the firm. Our IT company expressed this concern as well. He is not interested and tells me to just get the fucking computers off service. I can't believe we're still paying for this bullshit, so I do. Every computer he listed is taken off of service. The firm saves about $150 a month in IT costs. Fast forward about 2 weeks to yesterday. An attorney's laptop died and needed to be replaced, and an off-site office had a similar issue with an attorney's desktop. I call our IT company to get 2 computers put back on service, but for reasons beyond my tech understanding, there were issues and it took almost 4 hours to get everything up and running as needed and out to the proper parties. Here's the thing. The firm charges $115 an hour for my paralegal work. They charge $0 an hour for my IT work. The firm lost out on $460 in my billable time, as well as $2,400 for the 2 $300 an hour attorneys without working computers, because the boss wanted to save $150 this month. The best part? I'm not telling anyone. Not Dave, not accounting, not the partners. I don't care, and it's not like any money saved will be used for future raises. I hadn't gotten one for about 3 years before the IT role came along. Story 6. Call transfer issue. Hi everyone. A user transfers all calls from his landline to his mobile phone. That's how he has been working for several years. He tells me it doesn't work anymore. My mobile phone shows call transferred, but I never received the phone call. I checked our TOIP portal if the call transfer is correctly set up. Nothing has been modified. I tried to transfer to another number. It works fine. I removed the SIM from the phone, put it back again, still N-OK. I put the SIM card in another mobile phone. The call transfer is OK. Now that I believe the phone is the issue, I reset the network parameters, check the APN settings, still N-OK. Not finding the solution, I'm preparing to replace his phone, but he's using his company mobile phone as a personal mobile phone, so it's full of data, so I try to find another solution. I see that he has blocked more than 100 phone numbers. Scam. A colleague looks into it and asks me to save as a contact his landline. We then find it in the list of blocked numbers. Once unblocked, the call transfer works perfectly fine again. Story 7. Stupid problems require stupid solutions. Remember the Heartbleed bug? That mean vulnerability in the OpenSSL library that made for quite some hectic days in 2014? For our company, that bug came in a very unfortunate moment. The regulatory agency responsible for us had ordered a security audit just then, and passing it was critical. In theory, getting all our devices in order for the audit's vulnerability check should have been a breeze. 90% of our user devices consisted of custom Linux thin clients with a very streamlined deployment process. Get update files, push update to test group, validate it, deploy image files to production right pointing arrow. All devices update themselves automatically by the next reboot. This worked great for all machines that were powered off because when the users came in and switched them on, they updated themselves before login and were current for the audit the same morning. Were left running by users at the end of their workday would have just required a remotely triggered reboot. Due to a freak coincidence, however, the current OS build suffered from a previously undiscovered bug that prohibited reliable execution of any remote shutdown command. So we frantically needed to find a solution for this, or we'd have a severe number of vulnerable devices left in the fleet. Brainstorming within our team led to the conclusion that manually finding and rebooting those of the hundreds of thin clients that were left running was too time-consuming and prone for human error. Some machines were also locked behind closed office doors IT had no key for. Then one of us had a brainwave. Hang on, aren't those machines set up with restore on power loss equals last state in the BIOS? You know what IT did have a key for? The main facilities room which housed the central power breakers for our HQ. Power cycling the whole building did the trick. All previously running thin clients powered back up and fetched the update. By morning when the auditor came to us, 100% of our fleet was current with the Heartbleed fix, and we passed with flying colors. Story 8. Mysterious errored print job. Recent issue at a customer. A Konica Minolta printer keeps receiving an errored job over and over, which blocks the queue for other jobs. Printer in question does not provide IP address for source of the job, but does state the staff name, which is not someone who works from that office. Clearing the spooler on all local devices and rebooting the printer doesn't stop the issue. Unable to get packet capture from any network devices. On a whim, check the firewall and see port 9100 requests from a remote S2S connected PC. Cleared the spooler on that PC, job keeps coming. Restarted VPN, job keeps coming. Create a firewall rule to block the port and IP and job keeps coming. Can't reboot the firewall at production hours. End up loading into the advanced shell of the firewall, recentish patch level Sophos XG, and killing all current connections using contract-F. Turns out the S2S is very recent and connected from a crappy TP link, and the remote PC had a bunch of print jobs sent to the wrong printer, cause the queues are deployed to all devices. During the build of the VPN, the job got sent and the Sophos kept replaying the packet over and over for a week. Killing the connections killed the bad packet. Printer now working again. Story 9. The printer issue wasn't even the printer's fault this time, nor was it user error. Basic mundane tale from yesterday. So, I'm the de facto IT gal for my grandparents' church. They're a rural church, and my grandpa works in the administration. They're small, run mostly by old people, and don't have a big IT budget. So, since I'm the one tech-savvy grandchild out of all the families that run the church, my grandpa calls me when they need anything techie done. I don't make a job out of IT work and I'm not religious, but my grandpa pays me and I could always use the extra cash. I'm no pro, I have no training, just determination and good problem-solving skills. That's enough to seem like a pro to him at least. So, this time, it was a printer issue. Printers are the most unholy piece of work in tech, as the stories say. But at least fixing one is an actual challenge. So compared to the more common issues that are usually easy fixes that old people without tech literacy can't figure out, this was a breath of fresh air because it likely wouldn't be their fault, and I wouldn't have to hold back rolling my eyes out of politeness cause the printer has no conscience to care about it. So printer, the big unit office style one, beeps and asks you to put envelope paper in the multi-purpose tray with every print job. You have to walk down the hall to press a regular tray full of letter-sized paper with every print job, and a lot of printing is done cause they prefer paper record keeping. I go into paper settings on the printer, I change everything I can to try to print from the right bin. Fail every time. I check all the print settings when going to print. Everything is set to letter-sized paper. I go back and forth with printer settings cause it looks like it should be a printer issue, but none of the many available settings fix the issue. So my grandpa takes out his MacBook and tries to print. It prints fine. So boom, narrowed it down to a computer issue with the Windows 11 laptop. I am used to Windows 10 and don't use 11, so it took a few minutes to find the ridiculously hidden print settings. The ones from the settings menu formerly handled from Control Panel, and 4 menus deep, where no one using the computer would ever think to look. There it was. The default paper size was set to envelope. I set it to auto. Boom, printing with letter paper selected works again. I have absolutely no clue how it changed, so I went to the other Windows 11 computer, turned it on and tested it out. Same issue. Its settings were also changed to envelope in that deep hidden dialog box. I wrote a how-to-fix guide for them in case there are other 11 PCs I didn't get to. But I still have absolutely no clue how it happened, and I'm going to blame Windows 11 updates, and perhaps the fact that even being in a church cannot exorcise the demons plaguing that OS. Well, at least the printer has turned to Jesus this time. Story 10. I heard you like labeling laptops. Summer's here, which for us school IT techs means project time. Currently, I'm upgrading a couple of hundred PCs to Win 11. Let me regale you with a brief story in frustration. Last year, I had the pleasure of building 180 Chromebooks. Quite simple. Remove Chromebook from box. Add inventory sticker. Name Chromebook based off security number. Build and pack laptop back in box, after writing the name on the box. 180 times get a bit repetitive. Now, 60 of these Chromebooks went to student services. They were received warmly and promised they would keep better track than they did last year. A couple of days later, I was chatting with them, and they complained about the pain of opening all the boxes, labeling the Chromebooks in boxes and putting them back. Yes, they were adding their 9WN labels to the CHR9MEB9 OKs to track them, despite there already being labels on them, which were DIR3 CTLY related to their names. This also meant that they planned to send us a list of their own, made-up, NAM3s for the Chromebooks that had zero relation to what the Chromebooks were actually named, making their efforts completely pointless from an administrative point of view. I had a sinking feeling and decided to check a box. They did not put the Chromebooks back in the correct boxes. Anyone surprised? I explained their mistake as friendly as I could, but by then, the term had started so they didn't have time to fix it. So Gubbins here had to go through those 60 boxes and fix their mistakes. TLDR fun was not had. Story 11. A user discovered how to create an infinitely recursive self-powering monitor. So I get a ticket this morning. New second monitor won't display. Standard stuff. The user, let's call her Brenda from marketing, is super nice but famously tech-averse. I give her a call and go through the usual checklist. Me. Hey Brenda, you sure the power cable is plugged in firmly? Brenda. Yes! The little light is on, it's blue. Me. Okay, good. And the video cable, is it plugged into the monitor and the docking station? Brenda. Yes, I plugged it in just like the other one. It's in there real tight. I try the usual remote tricks. Nothing. Fine. Time for the ceremonial walk over to the marketing department. I get to her desk and it looks fine at a glance. 2 identical monitors. One is showing her desktop, the other is blue. She's right, the cable is plugged in securely, so I follow the cable from the back of the non-working monitor, and I see it. It's an HDMI cable. One end is plugged into the HDMI out port of the monitor. The other end is plugged directly into the HDMI in port of the same exact monitor. She had created a perfect useless loop. I just paused for a second. Me. Brenda, you've plugged the monitor into itself. The look of dawning horror on her face was priceless. I just unplugged one end, plugged it into the dock, and her desktop instantly popped up. She just stared at it. Wow, okay. I'm gonna go get more coffee. Me too, Brenda. Me too. Story 12. I made $45 by closing Chrome. Okay, I did a little more than that, but that was the main thing. I'm an amateur tech for hire. I have a little formal training, but I'm mostly self-taught. I mostly work with seniors from the retirement village down the road. Occasionally, I'll get hired by an older gen XER. I'm a younger gen XER at 48. Anyway, it's not enough to make a living doing. More like a hobby that gets me a little pocket cash now and then. I charge $30 per hour with 30 minutes minimum. Like I said, it's not a lot, and I'm not going to charge a huge amount like the stores do, especially to those who are on fixed incomes. Plus, unlike the big stores, my policy is that if I can't fix it, I won't charge you. So today's client was the daughter of one of my customers who passed away late in the winter. Long story short, I became close to this woman and her daughter. Anyway, the daughter was in town and had been complaining about her computer being so slow. I already knew what the problem was. It was more than 7 years old, and she liked to have 10 plus Chrome windows and tabs open plus 3 to 4 Word windows open at once. I had explained to her once that her computer couldn't handle that much processing and memory at once. I used different, less technical terms. So when I got a chance to sit down with it, guess what I found? I had to wait more than 7 minutes for Windows to fully load. When it did, Chrome had all these windows open. I told her she had to close them first. I would have done it, but last time she flipped out. So once she got everything closed, I went to work while she went to take a shower. I tested my theory by having Task Manager open and opening several Chrome windows and watching the memory usage go up and up with each one. So by the time she came back, I was just looking for any rogue programs or bloatware that might have been installed OEM. She asked how it was doing, and I said, purring like a kitten. She was surprised and asked what was wrong, and I said user error. I explained what was going on using an analogy of putting things on a physical desk until it was no longer functional. I told her to limit herself to no more than 3 tabs. She asked about her Yahoo that she was having trouble getting into. I had her open it, and lo and behold, it opened no problem. I did some other diagnostic stuff, cleaned up the startup programs, etc. When I left, it was running a full virus scan. She was using some program I had never heard of called ESET, but it was doing fine, so I didn't mess with it. This was probably the easiest job I've ever done. Story 13. You should be able to do the migrations faster. Early on in my career, I ended up managing a pretty major project in our department of over 100 users. We were upgrading everyone from Windows 3.1 to Windows for Workgroup 3.11 on new hardware. I was averaging about 3 to 4 user migrations per day, but for some reason, my boss felt that was slow. Here's the high-level process that was used for migrating the users. Build out a new desktop for a user. Back up the data from current machine, then apply it to new one across the network. Coordinate with each user on a time where they could be free for at least 90 minutes. Start the migration process with a final backup of their data to the network. Swap out their old computer with the new one, and do one last XCOPY from their backup repository to the new computer. Steps 1 and 2 were being conducted at my leisure, but I needed an uninterrupted block of 75 to 90 minutes per user to complete steps 4 and 5 for them. I basically blocked out 2 hours per user to account for getting over to their area with the new machine, any little overhead in the process, and buffer time to handle any other responsibilities that might come up. All of this was happening in a regular 8-hour business day. Occasionally, I could manage 5 migrations in a day by migrating 2 users in the same area at the same time, but mostly I tried not to take out whole teams at once. For whatever reason, my boss was sure that they could be done faster. I can't see why it takes more than an hour to complete a migration, he said, repeatedly. No matter how I outlined the process to him, he kept up the second guessing. He continued the passive-aggressive nagging for about 3 weeks into the project, when I was just about halfway through the migrations. One Monday, he suffered hardware failure on his primary desktop and decided that this was a good time to upgrade to his new machine and that he would do it himself. He He sort of spun this as me not having to stop the migrations to deal with him, but I also suspect that he relished the opportunity to prove that it could be done faster. Okay, worked for me. Now, in fairness, he and I were already running a different configuration from everyone else in the department. At the time, he and I were running Windows NT 3.51, and our two machines were being backed up to tape alongside the critical servers in our department. This is very pertinent to the saga. On his first attempt at installing Windows NT 3.51 on his desktop, he ran into a couple of snags which consumed considerable time and which I helped him with in between staff migrations. He had trouble with getting the drivers for our non-native SCSI controllers recognized, so we had to get those drivers and put them on the floppy. Even though I had told him to make a temp install to a different folder so that he could restore his whole OS from tape, he forgot that, perhaps with all the hoopla of the floppy drivers, and ended up doing a regular install, which then could not overwrite key files for itself from the tape drive data. Thus, he lost all of Monday, with the hardware failure itself, plus getting to the place of deciding to do the build and then learning about the need for the floppy. Issue number 1. Tuesday was consumed with doing the install to the wrong folder, running into the initial issues with trying to restore and starting a new clean install. IIRC. Late on Tuesday evening, the tape restore was kicked off to restore that data back over the machine. Issue number 2. Now, we were using a nice backup solution that was prioritized for backup performance, not restore performance. A full backup over the network took about 4 or 5 hours, IIRC. The restore, however, took approximately 20 hours, so there goes Wednesday, pretty much. Late afternoon on Wednesday, he rebooted to find that a few configurations from the apps were stored different in the backups that he expected. It was mostly fine, but he went home, preparing for more tweaking on Thursday. I also got a lot of questions from him about what exactly was part of the backup process and where exactly did each app store its files. By Thursday evening, he was good. Meanwhile, I averaged about 3 migrations per day that week because, well, I had to start checking in on him more each day. On Friday, just before departure time, when he asked how many migrations I had done that week, the number was 17. He made no comment this time. Thankfully, even though his experience with his personal restore was actually more complex than the migrations I was doing, it seems like he accepted the fact that things were not as simple as they had imagined they would be. And he was grateful for my assistance, and never again did he question me about migrating only 3 to 4 users per day, or why each migration took so long. I completed the project about 4 weeks later. We had some stragglers near the end, as you might expect with a long project, where all the cooperative folks go early. Once or twice a year, I remember this project, and I can't help but laugh each time. Story 14. I need all the space. Back in the last century, my workplace was a 24/7 operation with a mix of HP UX workstations and Windows PCs. The PCs were basically used for Word though, as literally everything else was done on the HP boxes. Then came Outlook. Everyone was getting their own email, and I had the job of installing it on all the PCs. First PC install failed. Second PC also failed due to insufficient disk space. Third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, ditto. Those PCs had 100 megabytes disks. They should have had lots of space for Outlook. Why didn't they? A quick check revealed dozens of zip files with names like Fenway 68 or Wrigley 72 in that style, and a baseball program installed on each and every PC. End result was that all the machines had less than 10 megabytes free space. I knew who the baseball nut in the office was, but when I went to the manager, I only said, "Someone installed unauthorized software. Do I have your permission to delete it so I can install Outlook?" He didn't ask what the software was, but did ask who did it. I replied that there was no way to know. When I deleted those files, I left a note for the baseballer to never again do what he did, and he didn't. Story 15. Internet slows down the computer. Back in the day, I used to moonlight as personal IT after work, mostly remove viruses without losing data situations. This one was different. I get a call from an used that was referred by a previous client. The issue is described as computer gets slow when using internet. We agree on a meeting at their home. What I find there is an ancient desktop running a Athlon XP 1400 plus CPU. The user shows me the setup, and it looks like Hez taking proper care of his Windows XP installation, no bloat or typical user stupidity. Then we get to using internet. The user downloads/uploads files to an FTP server. The data contents are not my business, but he makes a download to show me the issue. As soon as he starts downloading, the computer starts freezing to the point where the mouse cursor is lagging. I look for what may be causing it until I notice the CPU usage. Turns out the user's internet provider has been better than expected and given him an uncapped connection. The user was downloading at over 300 Mbps, at which point the CPU simply could not keep up with the managing of data, and just handing the simple FTP download protocol would take all of its resources. The user had issues understanding what was going on because why would using internet need my CPU? However, after a while I managed to talk him into understanding he needs a new machine and I cannot solve the issue without replacing the computer. Since I didn't fix it, I didn't get paid, but it was still an interesting experience I never saw before or since, where the CPU was a bottleneck for a download. Story 16. Replacing a 15-year-old PC. The last time I used my aunt's PC, it had Windows 8 on it and it clearly needed some maintenance. I bought her a newer PC at Christmas, an ex-office PC with a 7th gen i5 and 8GB RAM. I installed a new SSD, CMOS battery, and Windows 11 on it, which went smoothly, due to a few scheduling conflicts, though I didn't visit until this week. Her PC had been updated to Windows 10, which refreshed the PC quite a bit, and it was a lot smoother, and I almost felt guilty removing it as it has clearly gone from painful to use to slow but manageable. It's still a big upgrade from a 1st gen i3 with a HDD top, a 7th gen i5 with an SSD though. Anyway, I set about finding where cables went and realized the PC has cables plugged into it that went nowhere, and the main sockets also had things plugged in that went nowhere. We managed to remove an 4-way extension lead and just used the wall sockets too. Her monitor was better than I recalled, and while the new one is slightly larger and slightly clearer, the difference is negligible, but she was happy to have a new one. I transferred over her data. We found some video transfers she did in 2012 too, which we watched. She was still using Office 2003 for her daily correspondence. She is in her 70s, but she has her own business. I was surprised to see Windows 11 took it, and it installed with no fuss or issues. She uses Picasa for photo editing and restoration, and that went on fine even though it's been defunct for about 5 years, and even the software for her capture card, which was surprisingly good, as I'm sure you're aware there are a lot of crap USB capture devices around. In short, it was a breeze to install Windows 11 on an older PC and transfer software that's over 20 years old to wit that Windows Update will happily update and manage. She's got more floor space under the desk, more desk space, and she will be transferring more tapes over soon. Sorry it's not funny, but we had a laugh realizing that a lot of the cabling mess under the desk was unnecessary. Story 17. Engineering VP needs data from our website. Excruciating ordeal. Engineering vice president with a professional engineering degree and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and head of software development, an obviously very intelligent person, needs help from me to get some data off of our website. So I go in to his office to see what he needs. He needs to copy and paste something from our website. Okay, go to the website. He types in the search bar in Chrome Google and uses the mouse to click the search icon. I'm stunned into silence. Google comes up and he moves his cursor down to the Google search bar, clicks it, and types in the name of the company. Doesn't know the name of the website for the company that he's been working at for decades. And the website is our initials from 1994, but there's others that are similar. He grabs the mouse and clicks on the scroll bar and works his way down to page 2. I just watch in horror, finds it and clicks it, and there's the website. He asks what next. Eventually show him the menu item he needs, and he finds the page and uses the scroll bar again to look at it. I bite my tongue. It's the most excruciating thing I've ever seen. He points to a paragraph. Show him how to highlight it with left mouse. I doubt he is aware of the middle or right. He selects a paragraph of text. See, now copy and paste that in. He used the mouse to go up File Edit Copy, not Control-C. Not my job to teach him, and I like to watch train wrecks, so I'm super calm now. I have to tell him to go back to his editor. He doesn't know Alt-Tab, has no clue about the nav bar at bottom with the icon he needs, so I just watch as he clicks dozens of windows trying to find it. 2 monitors, so I wait. Finally finds it. I have to remind him to click where he wants it. Paste it in, please. Then he uses the mouse to File Edit, paste it in. The man has no idea of Control-V either. But then it gets worse. He says he doesn't need all this. Tell him to just delete what you need to get rid of. I say got the delete key. He says he needs backspace. Okay, that will do. You must have seen You've Got Mail, where Tom Hanks uses AOL to lie to Meg Ryan why he stood her up, and then used 2 fingers to backspace everything? Yeah, that's my vice president. Story 18. It looks like a window. Quick one for you. We had a meeting with one of our MSP overlords yesterday when the phone rang. User, how do I add an extra screen to my PC when it's plugged in? I want to get another desktop up on my screen so I can do work on 2 documents at the same time. Me, oh, easy, just do WinNP, then select Extend User. So I type in WINP and it'll pop up. Me, no, press the Windows key and P at the same time. User, where's the Windows key? I can't find it. Me, it looks like a window. Bottom of your keyboard, by the space bar, kind of squarish with a cross through it. User, got it, thanks. Hangs up. Colleague, another user unable to find the any key again. Story 19. Ma'am, do you know what a number is? This happened at my last job. I wasn't real tech support, but I knew how to Google things, which somehow made me the unofficial IT person for the office. I mostly dealt with low-key questions like, how do I take a screenshot? Or, can you fix my Excel sheet? Or, why does my printer not print? The printer wasn't turned on. They were cool about it when I didn't know something, so I didn't mind when everyone came to me with their problems. Anyways, this happened in 2020 during the early months of the pandemic. My boss asked me to call one of her clients because said client had a problem filing a request for money from the government. Yes, that was a thing here in Europe. Boss told her I'm good with computers and promised I'll help her with that. I try to argue that I'm not actual tech support and this is a little bit above my pay grade. I'm dead serious when I say Googling is my only IT skill. This might as well be an issue with the client's computer or Wi-Fi or whatever. Boss insists I try anyways. Fine, let's give this a shot. I call the client. A small business owner, very nice lady. I ask her at what point she gets the error. She says it happens when she entered the amount of money. I ask what the error message says. She reads, loosely translated here, smiley face, wrong decimal. Okay, I can work with that, I've got an idea. The following conversation happens. Keep in mind that, since I'm not actual IT, I can't remote access her computer and see what she's doing. I was basically working blind. Me, sounds like this, you entered a wrong symbol there. Did you maybe add a comma and a cent amount? I think you're only supposed to enter whole euro amounts. Her, no, I didn't. It's insert flat number with no decimals. Me, okay, good. Did you enter a dot between the first and second digit? It was a 4-figure number. Her, no, I didn't. Me, maybe you have a space in there somewhere. Can you move your cursor to the front and the end of the number and press the delete key once each time, please? Her, I did. Still doesn't work. Me, okay, just so we're on the same page. You only have numbers in this field. You didn't enter a euro symbol or anything else that is not a number? Her, no, only numbers. Me, still convinced I'm right with my hunch. Can you check again if there's a space in front or behind the number? Her, there isn't. Me, and you're absolutely sure there's nothing else? No symbols, no letters, no dot or comma, only numbers. Her, confident, only numbers. Me, desperate. Ma'am, I'll tell you my mobile phone number now. Please take a photo of the field and send it to me. Less than 2 minutes later, I get a photo sent on WhatsApp. Me, very politely, with the self-control of a saint. All right, ma'am, I figured it out. Please delete the letters UR you typed behind the number. Short silence. Her, oh, it works now. Thank you so much. Me, no problem. I hang up, and as I proceed to bang my head against the closest flat surface, I wonder how you can own a business when you apparently never went to elementary school to learn the difference between letters and numbers. Story 20. Late night visit from police while volunteering. Many years ago, in 2003, I was volunteering at a small school where I provided IT help and support. Ordinarily things like setting up PCs, and so on. One night, I was working late in the computer labs, upgrading their already ancient PCs to Windows XP, but I didn't think anything of it being the middle of the night. I just wanted to get it done, and things were moving slowly. Similar to some of my previous posts, this school was also in a rural area of the US. The town's police department had a good relationship with the school, and their officers would routinely drive by during their shifts just to keep a caring eye on the building, grounds, and campus. It must have been pretty unusual for them to see a truck parked under the awning at the main entrance late at night, so an officer got out and began looking around, walking the building's exterior and shining his flashlight in various windows. He must have thought someone broke in and was preparing to loot the place. Imagine my shock when he makes his way to the computer lab windows, shines his light, sees me, and taps on the glass. Gun drawn. I jumped about 10 feet in the air before hands up waving at him, saying, "I'm just the computer guy. Don't shoot." I ran outside. The cop was good-natured, and once I showed him my keys and verified they actually opened the building, he and I both chuckled, and I spent the next hour completely pumped on adrenaline from the scare. I did finish the upgrade, though. Story 21, 24 hours, you say. So I accidentally removed someone's access to our online expense system. My fault cause I thought they had left. I reinstated everything, access to the system and the reporting module, but reporting takes 24 hours to reinstate. Everything else is back. User sent me a message saying, "Okay, thanks. I will check all when access restored tomorrow." So I explained again, "You have access to everything but reporting? Reporting will be reinstated in about 23 hours. But, oh, great. Thanks for letting me know." That was 3 hours ago. User just sent me a message, "Hey, I just tried to access reporting and it's not working. Here is a screenshot showing that reporting is not working." Seriously? Story 22. Machines have needs too. Something came up today in my job that made me remember something that happened to me 10 years ago. A few weeks ago, I got asked to take data from about 30 to 40 users, parse it, consolidate it, aggregate it, and display the results as various dashboards. So I gave each person an input form. I did my best to explain the basics of data hygiene to the people doing the inputs. This column is for the date of the next meeting. It should be only dates. This column is for the proposed allocation count. It should be only numbers. This column is for the approved spend amount. It should be only numbers, etc. I got pushback almost instantly. The users said that in some cases there won't be any meetings, so they don't want to put a date in. They want to put n/a. Okay, I built in logic to account for that. Same thing for a few other columns. I accounted for that too. I got told I cannot restrict entries to only correct formats, as the executives or their assistants populating the forms want flexibility in what they enter. The form is for their usage too, so they can track things. This morning I found that some of the dashboards had odd results. It was displaying little streams of consciousness. Apparently some people had figured out how to expand the form and were adding little notes here and there. Ugh. So I added more logic to restrict ingestion to only the official part of the form, made extra space for people to enter notes, and moved the notes to that extra space. My experience suggests that this will be a never-ending struggle. I could move the input forms to more restrictive tools, but that often leads to other issues like user acceptance, training, etc. So here we are. Anyway, this back and forth made me remember interactions I had with a director of reporting 10 years ago. I was doing something similar then, taking data from various sources and creating dashboards from it. One source was a master list of all projects and various related metadata. Some projects were quite extensive and had multiple related timelines. There were also dependencies between some projects. So the director of reporting, who owned this list, had merged cells between columns, between rows, etc. He had also made these merges color-coded. This admittedly made it a bit easier for humans to read, but it made it almost impossible for my tools to ingest that list and make use of it for joining to other tables. His formatting was nice for humans, but poison for machines. So I contacted the director, explained the issue, and asked him to stop the cell merge formatting. He didn't respond for a while. When he did respond, he clearly didn't understand my explanation. Then after some more back and forth, he refused to make changes. He said his version made it easy to read. To my knowledge, the only person who was reading it was him when he made changes, and me when I tried to articulate why the formatting should change. I offered to create a table for him that would more or less duplicate his version as an end product of my reporting. We went through another round of back and forth and he refused again, so for the duration of this project, I would monthly make a copy of his table, then spend a couple hours going through it and unmerging all the cells. It was a pain, but I didn't see a way around it. That and other interactions with that man, who as mentioned was our director of reporting, convinced me that he had no understanding of reporting, data, dashboards, or anything related to those things. I will never forget his 250-plus slide monthly ops review. Or when someone asked for a list of incidents from the previous month and he casually supplied a table with 13K plus rows, where the actual count was about 60. I was told that he was spectacular at managing up and had somehow convinced our executive suite that he was essential to the well-being of the company. I got laid off from the company about 8 years after this happened. He didn't. He survived, I checked, and he is still there. I get paid in part to account for human foolishness interfering with data collection and presentation. I know that. But it shouldn't come from the head of the group that supposedly oversees those processes. I worked with him for almost 15 years. I pride myself that he thought of me as a friend that entire time, and had no idea I thought of him the same way a small-town cop thinks of a habitual drunk driver. I'm lucky in that my current company seems to do a fairly good job. I cannot think of anyone offhand that is incompetent on a wholesale basis. But who knows what the future will bring? Story 23. Spaces are not invisible magic. I work at a university where I occasionally help students with their IT problems in our computer lab. Usually I get maybe a few visitors per month. We only have approximately 600 students using these computers, and most of the problems are pretty straightforward and indeed not really a user error. But this one made me seriously reconsider my life choices. Student, I can't log in on my computer. Me, are your credentials working on any of the web services from the university? Student, yes, I can access these sites. Shows me on her phone as proof. Just for context, we use the same login credentials for everything. All computers, web services, lab and exam registrations, and for the Wi-Fi access. Me. Alright, could you please try to log in on one of the lab computers while I watch? I already opened a remote session to look out for error messages, and out of the corner of an eye, I start watching her starting the login procedure. She types in her username, which follows a known pattern for everybody, then hits the space bar a few times. Her hands move from the keyboard into her pocket and grabs her phone. After a few seconds, she slowly starts typing a Ling, random-generated cryptic password from her password manager into the username field, letter by letter. The whole password ends up in the username field in plain text because that field doesn't mask input like the password field does. Then, she cuts it from the username field and pastes it into the password field and, surprise! The login fails. Why? Remember those taps on the spacebar earlier? Well, some of them ended up in the username input field and some others were moved to the beginning of the password. Now, neither of the fields are correct. It took me a while to explain that white spaces actually matter in login forms, and even more time to convince the person that a cryptic, unmemorable password from a phone for daily logins at a public lab computer may not be the best idea. 24. Power off. A friend of mine left a voicemail asking me how to turn off his laptop computer. He just converted from Windows 10 to 11 and thinks the shutdown procedure has changed. He is one of the many computer users who learn by rote and lack the context to adapt to change. I responded with an email telling him to press the key he uses to turn on the computer. Now I'm wondering if I'll get another call. If that happens, I may tell him to unplug it and wait until the battery drains. Previously, while he was in the middle of the upgrade, he called and asked me how to respond to the license agreement. He, being a retired lawyer, had read it all and wondered if he could modify it. I told him that if he wanted to use Windows 11, he had to accept the agreement. Story 25. How our industrial Bluetooth device turned us into holiday tech support for everyone's grandma. Back around 2013-ish, I worked for a very small company that designed niche industrial products, stuff for factories, warehouses, and the like. As the company began to grow, we started generalizing our offerings and trying to expand our customer base. To help with that, the owner decided it was time to overhaul our website and hired a professional company to rebuild it. Up to that point, it had been designed and maintained by our embedded software engineers, because, hey, it's all just programming, right? As part of the update, the owner brought in a marketing consultant to improve our SEO, with the goal of making sure that when plant managers searched for very specific industrial terms, we'd be right at the top. Because of our size and the technical nature of our products, we didn't have a dedicated support desk. Instead, our 5-person engineering team, me included, handled customer support directly. The owner emphasized support as a top priority, and our website prominently boasted our world-class support. That might have been a mistake. Enter the holidays. We took a few days off for Christmas and New Year's, and when we came back, chaos. We were flooded with calls and emails demanding support, like angry people yelling that our Bluetooth products were garbage or asking how to pair their headphones with their phones. Confusion. Turns out we had exactly one product that used Bluetooth, a super specific device that connected certain pieces of industrial equipment on the factory floor. Not exactly consumer tech. Well, it seems the SEO work really did its job. If you Googled Bluetooth support or Bluetooth help in our region, we came up right at the top. So now we had a perfect holiday storm. Tons of people opening their shiny new Bluetooth-enabled gifts, running into pairing problems, Googling Bluetooth support, and finding us. Explaining to callers that we didn't make their headphones or speakers didn't always help. A lot of them just didn't get. But it's Bluetooth. Your website says Bluetooth. Why do you refuse to help me? A few even said things like, well, insert random cheap headphone brand doesn't have a support number. Can't you just help me to Bluetooth it anyway? Eventually, the wave passed, and things calmed down. Our new product lines actually took off later. The company grew rapidly and eventually got acquired and absorbed into a well-known industrial supplier. But for a while, we'd still get the occasional rogue call from someone wanting Bluetooth help. Oh, and then there was the one woman who called constantly, sometimes daily, to scream that our app, we didn't have one, was downloading PDFs to her phone, and that if we didn't stop it, she'd call the police. One of my coworkers actually spent an hour on the phone with her the first time, being incredibly kind and patient. He eventually concluded she was, in his words, probably just a nut job. Technical term. Edit. Just to be clear, I ran my draft through ChatGPT for polishing before posting. Sorry if that's not allowed. I'm an engineer, so I write at a 5th grade level. The story is all mine and none of the content was changed, just sentence structure and grammar to make it more intelligible. But some of the commenters were flagging this as an AI-generated post, so I wanted to be upfront about that. Story 26. How asking one simple question could have saved me days of work. About 20 years ago, I worked in a meat processing plant. Back then, I did an unpaid internship there in order to get my qualification to go to a technical university, and I was hired to help with phasing out older computers and replacing them with new ones. The process was easy. They bought a bunch of new computers. We, that is my boss and I, were tasked with setting them up and then replacing the previously best machines with those new ones. The machines we took away from them were cleaned up and would replace even older machines and so on, with the end goal of replacing the machine in boning, the place where the meat was separated from the bones for further processing, which still ran on DOS. Among the recipients of the newest machines was one older lady that was scared of technology, and especially any changes to her work environment. She was sweet and kind and utterly helpless when it came to anything IT. She was also close to retirement and also managed to use the software she needed for her daily work, so no one was angry when she needed help because she accidentally hit the wrong keys on her keyboard. And now Excel looked funny. She managed to hide the taskbar. In order to make the transition from her current computer to the new one as easy as possible for her, I recreated her current environment as closely as possible. Don't ask me how, but I was able to log in as her. She might have given me her password, or maybe we had gotten an image of her machine or something. I really do not remember anymore. Her desktop was a mess. Every bit of space on the screen had the icon of a program on it. As this was 20 years ago and the screens were smaller back then, I think she had about 30 or so icons in total. So in order to fulfill my task, I looked up every program on her desktop, downloaded and installed it. If they had newer icons, I made sure to change those to the older icon she was used to. All in all, setting up her PC took me a few days with all the added work, instead of the 1 to 2 H I needed for all the others. I installed the new machine at her desk after she was already gone. She only worked half days, and left a sticky note to call me when she came in the next day. The next day came around and she called, and I went to her desk. First hurdle, how to switch the box on by pressing the one and only button on the front of the box, to she was happy to see how quickly it booted up, and even more delighted to see all her familiar icons and even her dog, her desktop background. Then I asked her to test a few of the programs she needs on a daily basis. She opened Excel and 2 more custom programs that had been made for my company, logged into all 3 and clicked around a bit, once again happy that everything worked the way she is used to. I asked her to test some of the many other programs as well. I was afraid that the versions I had found were too new for her, and I would have to hunt down older ones, and she told me, "Oh, I don't really use those," only to add a heartbeat later, "Can they be removed?" Story 27. I don't know what it's doing, so it can't be important, right? Back in my MSP days, I supported a client that was in the building next to our office. They had outgrown their original office space and were unable to get any more space in the building they were in. so they had rented some space in the building across the street. Rather than pay for another internet connection and router plus VPN to join the networks, we had set them up with a point-to-point wireless bridge to provide connectivity between the offices. It wasn't great, but it was serviceable enough for their needs, and more importantly, fit into their limited, non-profit budget. One day, we got a call from them saying that the network was down at the secondary office. They still had Wi-Fi, but no connection to the internet or network drives at the main office. I went over and did some initial troubleshooting at both locations, and all the network gear seemed fine and was responding to ping except for the wireless antenna at the main office. I hadn't been the one to install this, and wasn't actually sure where it was, so I went and talked to the network engineer who had set it up. Outside, and we looked up at the roof of the client's main office. He pointed at an antenna up there and said, "That's not our antenna. Let's go see what's happening." We go into the client's building and ask the building's receptionist if they know about anyone having any network maintenance done. We get told that one of the local wireless ISPs is up on the roof doing some work. We get roof access and sure enough, find an ISP tech hooking up a new antenna onto the bracket we had used to install our client's wireless bridge, with our antenna laying sadly on the ground. After a brief conversation, he apologized and said he had asked the building manager if our client's antenna was being used for anything or if he could take it down and reuse the mounting hardware. Apparently, the building manager didn't know what it was but told him that no, it wasn't in use and sure, go right ahead and take it down. We nicely asked him to put our shit back and install his own damn bracket, which he kindly did. Story 28. Curiosity is punished immediately. I currently work at a small company building very specialized servers. My main job is actually physically assemble the machines and set them up, including parts of quality control. As I am still in training, not specialized at all, and it is also a very small company, I also became the de facto administrator for our ticketing system. I overhear chatter of a customer having trouble with their machine and asking for assistance fixing it. Not super unusual, but it's a slow day and I enjoy working on problems. So I snoop around for the ticket. It's titled roughly, "Trouble finding hard drive." Okay, I think to myself, is it not recognized by the system, not formatted properly? I scroll further, and indeed, the drive being not recognized by the machine was the original error. Sadly, this was also the drive containing the system partition, with all the headache this brings with it. A little further scrolling, and I am greeted by horrible tech gore. The customer had taken it upon himself to disassemble the server entirely. He had stripped it down almost as far as I get it when I start installing components, all because he had been looking for the drive. The environment, far as I can tell between the strewn parts, doesn't exactly look like dedicated work surface, anti-static mats or something. In the customer's feeble defense, he was looking for an NVMe drive that is directly on the motherboard. He had disassembled a partition of heat sinks that could house those and found only empty slots. The foil still on the pads of the heat sinks probably telling him that he was looking at the wrong spot. This is when he finally relented and asked. Had he consulted the manual, available in something like 20 languages, he would have found that NVMe slot 1 would have been easily accessible under its own little heatsink. I am slowly becoming scared of our customers and the things they will do to these machines. Story 29. Got a question that actually stunned me. I'm currently working at the help desk in a university library. I'm the unofficial team lead, so I'm fielding most tickets since it's the summer semester, and tickets are slow. Had a professor come up to the desk a few days ago telling me her laptop won't upgrade to Windows 11 and the battery keeps losing charge. Quick test shows that yes indeed, the battery is borked, so I replace it with one of the multitude I have salvaged from broken PCs the university just throws out. But this story isn't about my boundless private junkyard. It's about this professor. I address why her computer won't upgrade to Windows 11, and it's because her hard drive is nearly full. 226 gigabytes out of a 256 gigabytes SSD. Not enough space to upgrade. Easy fix? No. I ask her if she uses her OneDrive, and she tells me no. I tell her it's quite easy and secure, and since the university pays for 5 terabytes per professor, she'll never have to worry about running out of space. Her response: "Oh, I don't use that. Everyone can see it." See? This means I am on the internet and everyone can see what's on my computer, she says, pointing to the C drive icon in File Explorer. I collect myself and explain this is not the case. I convince her we can use OneDrive as a backup while I replace her hard drive since the university has no means of cloning drives. I start to walk her through the procedure, unaware of the verbal torpedo speeding towards me that will forever hurt my brain to think of. Me, okay, first click on your documents folder. Her, what's click? This just didn't derail my train of thought, it sent it into orbit. This kicked off an hour session of me explaining what clicking is, that a hard drive with partitions is like a pie chart, that people can't see what her computer has on it without her password, that she has to double-click on desktop icons what double-clicking is, and that when Windows says hi on her screen during a first login, it's not a Microsoft representative trying to talk to her. I resolved her issues, installed the new drive, put all her old data back, and she happily went on her way. At least her reception was positive, and she wrote my director a glowing thank you note about me. But what's click will now and forever be my bar of questions that makes the record scratch go off in my brain. Story 30. That time I got finessed by my coworker. I've been out of IT for a while now, but one of my friends is dealing with a CloudStrike issue that brought down his whole company, going on 2 weeks now. It has me reminiscing about good, old days. Back at my last job, I had a coworker who was, to be honest, lazy. He was a good dude, always left a room with everyone smiling and laughing, but didn't do anything he didn't have to do. Anyway, Dan, as he will now be called, stopped by my office looking for a 50 feet Ethernet cable. We generally didn't need cables that long and didn't keep a lot of them on hand, so I asked why he needed it. He decided to show me since the office he was hooking up was right down the hall. We walk into a rectangular office with a printer in the bottom left corner and 1 PCs in each of the upper corners. Problem was there were ports in the upper corners and the bottom right corner. Dan was going to run a 50 FTER all the way around the room clockwise to the port in the bottom right to avoid the door to the office. Now I explained to Dan we don't need to hunt down a 50 feet cable. We can get away with using short cables if we go from the printer in the bottom left to the port in the upper left, from the PC in the upper left to the upper right, and from the PC in the upper right to the bottom right. Dan didn't get it, so I explained it again. Dan still didn't get it. At this point, I just said, you know what, Dan, it'll take care of it. As soon as I said that, he had a huge grin, shook my hand, and was gone before I could say another word, leaving me standing in that office with its soon-to-be occupants staring at me expectantly. I instantly knew Dan had played me, and I walked right into it. I wasn't even mad. I admired his commitment to the bit. Wherever you are, Dan, I hope you're still playing junior text for the fool. Story 31. It feels like the more sophisticated technology becomes, the less willing people are to even do the bare minimum. Client. We understand that there is a manual function to attach documents to invoices when our client hasn't uploaded one. In this case, we'd want to attach proof from the email confirmation from our client that the invoice is authorized. Can you assist? Me. Sure. You just take a screenshot of the email and upload using the Add Image button. Client. Screenshot? You mean print screen? Me. Yes. So just take a print screen. You can use Snipping Tool or Greenshot or a similar app to do this easily. Then just upload that image against the invoice. That way you just have a nice snapshot of the email the client sent over. Client. Is there some way we could automate this so that we don't have to convert the email into an image format? It seems like an extra step that is unnecessary. Tech support never sleeps, and neither do these stories. Subscribe for more.